Musical Talk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Musical Talk. I'm David Kingsmill and I'm sitting here with Mr. Thos Ribbits. Hello sir.
Hello.
Lovely to see you. And we are going to be here this evening to talk about Happy Ending, a musical that I saw at the Arcola just a week ago at the time of recording, and a musical which Thos has no idea what it's about, so this will be an interesting conversation.
I know two things about it.
Yep.
I know the word happy and the word ending.
Excellent, yes.
Is it actually
it's ending.
So I got
singular.
that wrong.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, fair enough. So one thing. Excellent. That's a start. Might just be worth noting that in the course of discussing this show, by the very nature of its sort of complexity and wovenness, there will be a couple of spoilers that will be discussed, which also enhance the point. So just be aware of that when you're listening to this. First of all, however, I did have the great fortune, after my viewing of the show, to sit down with the wonderful Gillian Kirkpatrick, who played the lead role in this show, and we talked a little bit about what this was dealing with, and we're going to hear from her right now, and then Thos and I will be back in a minute to talk a little bit more about Happy Ending.
Musical Talk.
Hello, my name is Gillian Kirkpatrick and I'm playing the part of Carrie Evans in the play called Happy Ending, which is on at the Arcola Theatre.
Happy Ending indeed, although it's sort of perhaps a name that might make those that have seen it question where it's precisely going, because this is very heavy subject matter, isn't it?
It is a very,
here.
Yes, it's almost taboo subject, which is one of the main reasons why Annette Goff, the original writer of the play, wanted to broach the subject, because she, having suffered cancer herself, felt it was quite hard to understand why people would skirt around the topic. They would call it a serious illness. They wouldn't mention the C word. The C word, they wouldn't say cancer. Whereas for a lot of other, perhaps more serious illnesses, they would talk about it in more depth. So she thought there was a taboo around the area, and she thought, well, how do we treat this? So let's write a play about it and let's make it funny. She wanted to try and take away that fear, almost. And I know it's a big ask, and it's for one person to do, but I think she wanted to start people thinking that they can talk about it more and accept it more. I mean, because a lot of our cancers are curable these days, so it's not as big a deal as it has been in previous decades, but
Quite so.
Still, obviously, it's...
And I will have done a preamble to this, but let's again put this into a little bit of context. We are talking here about your character who has been diagnosed with very sort of far along terminal cancer.
Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. And
so she essentially, at this point in her life, doesn't really have much of a choice except to control her time, which is what we're talking about within this play. And it does. You're right about this taboo. It's really, it gets punched in the face pretty much by this, doesn't it? Because you've got these three characters who are already in this ward. You have the hippie who just wants to try anything and everything and see if it can make it feel better, and sees the cancer as a gift for her own personal reasons, which I won't spoil. You have the girl who's entirely into her faith and is trying to find her way out that way, and somebody who essentially wants to use tactical nuclear warfare as far as medicine goes to just blitz it out. And then yourself, who comes in and questions all of this, trying to find your own way and trying to understand exactly how you're going to face it. And so what's it like, that's sort of essentially what the plot is, but what's it like to inhabit that character? Because that's somebody who's in a very dark place in her life.
Yes, it's very challenging, because it's getting the balance between her humour, which is her method of dealing with it, almost like a mask, but still getting it coming through that it is a serious thing, because of course it is serious. I mean, she's got months to live. It's very challenging, but I like a challenge. But yeah, I mean, her character is that she's very much a sticking her head in the sand type of a person. So she has gone to the oncologist, and there's something has found to be wrong, and he's explained it to her, but she's just gone, no, I don't want to hear. That's fine, I'll just deal with it. Because that's what she does, she just deals with things. So when she comes in for her first treatment, it's like, okay, I'll just get this treatment, that'll be fine, and then I'll go, that's fine. My daughter's getting married in 2 weeks, then that's fine. And then slowly but surely she begins to realise, actually, no, hang on a minute. She can't pretend anymore, and then she has to face the ultimate question of whether it's worth, spending years in a chemotherapy ward with all the side effects that it entails and everything. And so she decides, no, I just want to be me.
And as an actress playing the part of an actress, playing a part within this operating theatre, what do you feel is her take on this? How much of what she's doing is acting, and how much of it is her covering what she's trying not to face? Because this is a very difficult thing for anybody to face.
It is a very difficult thing for anybody to face. And it's funny because the doctor mentions at one point, says, oh, you're an actress, so it implies that therefore you must be acting now. And that's a bit of a bugbear of mine, because being an actress, I can categorically say that I don't act in real life. So there is this kind of implication that she can act in real life because she's an actress. But I think it's it's less of an act she's putting on, but more of it, she's lying to herself. She's putting the mask on for herself, but not necessarily for anyone else's benefit. So it's her way of dealing with things. Yeah.
And something else that I think stands out so strongly in this, which you must feel inhabiting this role, is the soul that's gone in. Because I mean, I have suffered sort of parents going through, or family, going through cancer, and Anna Gov, who wrote this, passed away of cancer just over 2 years ago, if my research was correct, at the age of 59, I think. Yeah. And obviously, having gone through what she's writing about, there's a lot of her soul in this piece.
Very much so.
What do you feel about that within this? Because you're inhabiting, in many ways, almost a character who's kind of lived.
Yeah, I mean, Anat Gov said that the character of Carrie Evans wasn't her per se, but it's who she wanted to be, and it was the choice that she wanted to make, but she didn't have the courage. But the humour and the positivity that comes across was very much her. She dealt with things in a very kind of like tongue-in-cheek way, and just, I'm going to joke about it, because it's that saying, laugh or you'll cry, and you might as well laugh, you know. So she was a very, very strong woman, inspirational woman, and I suppose my struggle is that I just want to do justice what she's done and wrote about, because of course, yes, I mean, my brother has had cancer, he's fine now, but they say that everybody knows somebody, so it is a topic that touches us all. And what actually I saw on the news last night, which scared me, was it's got to the stage where it's going to be 1 in 2 people now that are going to actually contract cancer at some stage in their lives, and that's quite scary.
Which in many ways actually makes something like this all the more important.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I think actually understanding
people
that it is difficult to deal with,
yeah.
but also understanding that you can deal with it is potentially a very important
I think
thing.
if we talk about it more, that it's more likely that people will go and get those checkups, you know, sooner, hopefully, and not kind of go, oh, I don't shut that in a cupboard. I don't want to think about that. That's too frightening. You know, maybe if we're more open about it, and we can cure some cancers, and there's fantastic targeted chemotherapy going on these days. I mean, I actually worked for a short time for cancer research.
Really?
I was a PA to the head of oncology, and they were specialising in targeted chemotherapy. So it was very interesting to find out. That was at the kind of base stages, and that's growing now. Obviously for specific cancers, not all cancers. But so I mean, we need to embrace it more, really, I think. And
absolutely. Well, coming back to sort of the drama side of this play, obviously we're musical talk, and
yes,
this is,
of course, yes.
whilst this is not perhaps a full-fledged musical, it is a play with music and with songs.
It's a play with music, yes.
And it seems to me that the songs really bring out the metaphor of this as well, because you have these wonderfully sort of metaphorical elements of the globe of light that is cut out from you in the beginning of the or the end of the first act even, and then you have this the cancer represented as the Spanish dancer with crab claws instead of hands, and it's this very, very sort of everybody's own take on this. What do you feel that the music adds to this, and what's it like putting that into something that is so serious and yet comedic?
Well, I think the music, certainly my intention is that it's all in my head. The numbers that are happening are caused by hallucinations that I'm getting from the various drugs that I'm getting, and it's my idea that these horrific images that it's like, oh my gosh, 1 minute it's like a dancing crab, and the next minute it's like a surgeon with a chainsaw, and it's just, and all this going around in my head, which culminates in this glowing orb, which is symbolic of my cancer. But at the same time, when I say I see a great light, it's almost like I've seen it and I've gone, oh my gosh, an epiphany. I've seen this epiphany and I know what I want to do now. So that's mainly the the purpose of the numbers, is that's through her head. That's what she sees. And somebody mentioned, I think, I can't remember who it was, mentioned a connection to The Singing Detective. I don't know if you ever watched that when it was on TV, but they very much did that kind of almost incongruous.
Yeah.
Coming out of nowhere, it's like, oh, because suddenly there's a music number. What's that all about? But it is quite. I like that. True. It's quite quirky. Yeah. And they did it in Ally McBeal. They did it in Moonlighting. You know, and it's fun. It's fun.
I hadn't thought of The Singing Detective. That's a brilliant comparison. Actually, it's very, very sort of true.
Yeah.
And what's the reaction been like to this? Because you are coming back to this taboo element that we were talking about at the beginning. You are, as well as punching taboo in the face, you could potentially be doing the same thing to audience members who feel that this is a very, very strong subject, one way or the other, for better or for worse. What's that been like?
Well, we've had a varied audience members. Some people that have actually suffered cancer themselves, and in fact, I think it's very brave for them to actually come and. Or maybe it makes them brave, actually, having suffered it. They're going, come on, yeah, right, let's watch a play about it. I think a lot of people might be put off by the subject matter because they don't want to address it. They don't want to go and see something about that. But we've had, which I love actually, we've had quite mixed reviews, which always makes me think, if I hear a production has had mixed reviews, it makes me go, right, that's interesting. I want to go and see that because I want to make up my own mind. Some people can't get their heads around it. Other people absolutely love it. I know it's got very good Jewish following and Israeli following. It's very much a kind of Israeli sense of humour. Sure. So I think they totally get it. Yeah, so it's been mixed, but we've had some really good reviews, and we've had some people that go, I don't know, I don't get it. So, but I think Danny has always knew it would be a bit like, it's like Marmite, you said the other day. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a Marmite musical.
I'm going to jump straight on top of that and actually say that if people are hearing this and they are put off by the subject matter, don't let it put you off. Because I actually think that there's a certain amount of importance in this, which I've already touched on, but I also think that it's something that being put off by it is it's not doing, choose my words carefully here, it's not necessarily doing justice to what it's trying to say, because I think it's not trying to make people fear or be horrified in any way, shape or form. It is. We have the producer here with us who's actually saying it's funny. And it is. There are parts of this where I was breaking out laughing. You will never see the word fenugreek the same way.
I know, right? I mean, it's made me want to go and have curry all the time. I don't know about you, but I'm like, I must have a curry tonight.
And if that isn't a mystery to get you along to come and see it, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I think we've been sponsored by all the Indian restaurants in London, I really believe. So,
well, they'll get their money's worth out of it, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I personally feel, and obviously I'll talk more about this afterwards once I give my views personally, but I think that the way that this has been directed, the way it's been approached, the way it's been written in the first place is actually very, very respectful. Despite the fact that we're saying, yes, it's comedic, despite the fact that there is this sort of slightly surreal element to what's actually going on, I think it's very, very respectful to what people are suffering or have suffered or may suffer later on in life.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much a black comedy, and we can laugh at the most atrocious things.
Absolutely.
We can, because it's a way of dealing with it, you know. You have to be able to laugh, otherwise it's just gosh, what's the alternative, you know?
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more.
So, yeah. It's a fun evening. It's not go and slit your wrists or anything like that. No, it's a good fun evening, and it's quite challenging, hopefully, and we hope to challenge people's thoughts and think, oh, okay, maybe I should think about that, and, you know.
I'm pretty certain it will do, and I know for a fact that it has. And look at the title of the play, people. Happy ending.
I know, right?
It may be...
There was a bit of confusion over that, I think.
Well, there may be some irony in it, but there is also a great deal of truth in that as well. And read that how you will, but come and find out. How can people come and see this? Where is it on? What's it on? We've already said, but let's reiterate.
So it's on at the Arcola Theatre in Dalston. Very, very trendy, which is near Dalston Junction Station, Dalston, Kingsland. We're on till the 7th of March. And just go online, go onto the Arcola website, arcola.com, book your tickets. if you heard that, I don't think we did. Say it again, Danny.
Happy Ending Musical CO UK.
That's the one.
There we go.
And that's it, yeah.
All right, well, fantastic. Gillian, thank you so very much for your time.
My
It's been an
pleasure.
absolute pleasure.
Lovely to meet you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is Happy Ending at the Arcola, and I'll be back to talk more on that in just a second.
Musical talk.
So there we have it, the wonderful Gillian Kirkpatrick, who I will quite happily begin by saying did a fantastic job of this. I told her that after the interview, but I thought that the subject matter of this was serious enough that it was actually worth focusing on that rather than talking about the performances, because that's rather what we're going to do now.
Well, I actually want to ask you a question before we get on to the
Of
performances,
course.
which is tone. Because
Yes.
obviously, if you read a paper description of what you were going to get, you would think, my word, this is a harrowing piece. Gosh, more than one person in a cancer ward with potential and indeed definite terminal illnesses doesn't sound like a great night out, and also fairly difficult to musicalise, one might argue.
Absolutely.
So what is the tone? Because obviously there's also gallows humour in real life in those circumstances, and camaraderie, which develops in hospital wards and things like that. So
Yeah, well, Gillian
What did
used
you see?
Gillian used in the interview there the term black comedy, and that is absolutely what this is. It has a very, very important message, which it puts through to you very effectively, but it does it all. You know, Happy Ending, I feel like it's the subject matter and the title sound like they shouldn't fit, but actually the way that the subject matter has been handled, which is also very, very sensitive, but it doesn't really get you down. We brushed over this with Gillian, but I think it's a good thing to focus on, because it's something, it would be so easy to be turned away from this show. One thing I noticed recently, actually, I was on Twitter and I noticed that they had produced a new poster for the show, and I feel like that new poster does much better justice to the show than the old one did. I know you haven't seen either,
No,
but the
explain,
new
I'm
poster shows
all
the
ears.
characters, the cancer patients, as they are, but has the surrealism. So you have the crab-clawed tango dancer, which we discussed in the interview with Gillian, whereas the previous poster had Gillian's character from the back, so just sort of the back of the bust, head, shoulders, and camera flashes, like press camera flashes, and it felt much more like it was going to be some celebrity expose based on the poster. And I have to admit, when I first looked at it, I couldn't quite work out what angle this show was going to take, and I feel like possibly the biggest problem, and the reason that listeners might think by repeating this I'm harping a little on the don't get put off string, is I feel like, with the greatest respect to them, it was very slightly mismarketed. They talked to it a musical about dying well, and there's two things that I feel are wrong with that sentence, which we'll sort of touch on straight away, I guess. One of which is I think that it doesn't encapsulate the importance of the message, or the fact that they're not trying to mock death. I mean, Gillian's character does a little bit, only in the sense that she's trying to understand better for herself.
and can I ask, are the characters British?
They are.
Fine. So one would expect a bit of dark humour, a bit of gallows humour.
Absolutely, yes. It's not missing either. You know, it's there is some traditional British humour in here, but of course it's a translation from the original Israeli play.
Yes, of course.
Whilst it's being delivered with that typical British dryness, it's also coming from an original foreign perspective. And so I think some of the humour that's in there, it mildly surprised me how well it played off the Brits, essentially, because it's translated. Maybe it's a subtle changes in the translation. I don't know exactly how the translation was done, but it really fits these characters as well as the actresses and actors that were playing them.
So it certainly didn't get lost in translation. There's a kind of synergy, you think, with the original text, as far as you're able to tell.
I mean,
Certainly,
of course.
Or at least it was in some way encapsulated in performance to make it a successful performance.
And my understanding is that they do say, I think, on the programme, translated and adapted by. But I get the impression from what I've understood of it so far that there isn't an awful lot of adaptation. I think that's probably what we're talking about, where it's more a question of allowing things to fit into the British vernacular.
But sometimes it's quite interesting, because I've seen this culturally before, not in a musical, but I went to see a Neil Simon play with Jeff Goldblum in the West End a couple of years ago. I think it was called The Prisoner of 29th Street or something like that.
Right.
And it's by Neil Simon. It's got that kind of dry New York Jewish wit. But we don't think of American culture necessarily in the widest sense of supporting the underdog, but going instead for the winner. However, there is an element in Jewish comedy, at least, of sort of the hangdog everything happens to me kind of comedy. That was certainly prevalent in this. And that translates really well into Britain, where we generally back the underdog over the arrogant, sort of over-the-top, loudmouth success.
Yeah.
You know, we'd much rather see a steptoe and son, which everyone's miserable, than someone coming in and being a successful businessman, should we say.
Well, I think actually...
comedy is based on failure.
Yeah, totally. And I think actually that's one of the reasons that this is so well written, is because Gillian's character starts off being... She's not aggressively unlikable, but she's so arrogant in the prima donna actress role that you immediately feel like she's going to upset this ward. And she does, but I think it's the delivery of the fact that you understand she's doing it to better understand her own condition. And
it's a journey of discovery against the clock, in a way.
Absolutely. And as I said with Gillian, everybody faces cancer in their own way. And I feel like that's what this show does best, is it demonstrates here are 4 utterly different methods of actually dealing with cancer. But more specifically, here are 3 that we know from the outset. And then here's the interloper who comes in and hasn't yet fitted into that group of people who have found their method. Yeah,
she
absolutely.
hasn't yet found her way.
No, absolutely. But in the process of not having found a way yet, because she doesn't maybe even understand that a way is necessary, there's a certain amount of light mocking and ridicule, and she does actually eventually just challenge them straight up, as I'm sure anybody would expect from that kind of a situation, because of the lack of understanding. And there's a certain amount of the thing that we fear the most is that which we don't understand, and she's suddenly in this ward of people who to her must seem crazy.
Now, my question is, can I ask, she's at stage 4, but the other people in the ward are not quite so developed, so are they terminal, or they're not yet terminal?
They're not, well, I don't think it's entirely fully disclosed. They have certainly come to terms with the fact that they believe they're moving towards the end, but they are each fighting that end as hard as they possibly can.
But she knows she can't. She knows it's terminal for her?
Pretty much, yeah,
Right,
because once you've reached stage 4, there's nothing you can do. So at the beginning, she's not 100% sure what's going on, and then later on the doctors come in and they say, we can put you on it. It's experimental treatment, but that's all that's open.
But that's interesting, because if in real sense she knows it's likely to die, where the others are still fighting it and are hoping not to, or trying to find ways in which they might prolong it or whatever. She does actually, there's a kind of sort of raw truth that comes with being faced with the stark reality. You are going to die. So why would you not ask questions and challenge?
Absolutely.
Because you've got nothing to lose, whereas they have got something to lose, and unless they see the way, they may not
what they pull
find
in
what they're looking for.
Absolutely. Well, what they pull in is the fact that she hasn't told her family, and she has children.
This is the actress.
This is the actress. But they're old enough to deal with themselves, and so she says, well, it's not their problem, it's mine. And she's not seeing the social impact. They're not seeing the social impact of what's actually going to happen when they find out that she's ill, or when she dies. Because obviously even with the experimental treatment, you can't really hide cancer therapy.
No.
It's one of those things that, especially as a patient degenerates as well, you can't hide the disease anymore. So that gets brought in as their foil against why she should fight this and find her own way of fighting it.
Now, what you've described to me so far is a fantastic play.
Yes.
Why is it a musical? How is it a musical?
This is my second...
Where is it a musical?
This is my second problem with the musical About Dying Well. I can't categorise this as a musical.
Oh.
I want to say...
It's a play with songs?
Yes. It's absolutely a play with songs. My memory has gone fuzzy. I want to say there were 4 or 5 throughout the whole piece, but by no means were they the majority. There was some great music in it, some very, very effective songs, and I think the surrealism that we mentioned, or I mentioned in the interview with Gillian, where they bring in this, the man with the crab claws dancing the tango with one, she finds this globe that represents her own cancer that's cut out of her in a musical number. Those are all very, very effective. There's one song I'll come on to in a minute that I have an issue with, but I personally feel it's difficult to really say that this is a musical. And I think that's one of those complicated little grey areas, because yes, there's music in it, yes, there's choreography in it, but is it really a musical? Personally, I don't think so.
But that's an issue of classification.
Absolutely.
And we're certainly happy to talk about plays with music here in Musical Talk.
Mm-hmm.
However, in terms of the narrative, in terms of the book, did the songs help the story? Because the story sounds very strong, although strikingly hard in some senses.
Yes,
but
definitely.
Leavened with comedy. What did the songs add?
And this is where
could you have done it in another way? Should you have done it in another way?
there's two different answers to that question. Remind me about that, because I'm going to answer your first question first. There is one song which I mentioned that I have a problem with, and that's the very first song of the show.
Oh, right.
And I have to confess, I will state right now that I'm going to give this a great rating, but I have to say that when it got to halfway through, or maybe even a third of the way through that first song, through no fault of the performers, or indeed the direction or anything like that, I thought I was going to rate this quite low.
Oh, right.
And the reason being is that the nurse character explains all of the medical options to, like the drug options, to Gillian's character, and then sings that exact description again.
Oh, right.
It's
Very old-fashioned.
3 or 4 minutes of repetition of what was just said. And I have a big problem with that, because I think it's in modern times there are very, very few cases where a musical can get away with that. They do exist. I can't think of any straight off the top of my head, which goes to prove how rare they are, and this one, I'm afraid, failed.
But I wonder why that's an odd directorial choice, it seems to me. That presumably where that decision must have rested, because you would have thought by now, the book writer is dead, but she didn't write the song, so that's an adaptation decision later on.
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure. I'm actually not sure she didn't write the songs. Because it's only by Anat Gov. There is nobody else who is actually mentioned.
Right.
So I'm inclined to think that she probably did. Now, here's an interesting issue, and I don't have this to hand, unfortunately. The one thing that's worth mentioning is something a little different that this company tried doing, and I approve of it in principle, is that they went for a single sheet program, a single A5 sheet that had the names and a bit of description on it, and that was about it.
So a cast list.
Essentially. But there was a QR code on it that you could scan to get the full program.
Oh, right.
Because they wanted to save paper, try and go a little bit economical.
I've seen that. I don't like it myself, because
Well,
most of us don't use those wretched things.
I do have it, and I'd be perfectly happy to do it, but I've come up here, I've decided to talk about this with you because I thought it would make an interesting discussion, and I don't have that sheet. Whereas, if I'd had a program, I might have brought it up to show you. And it's sort of, I feel like that was an interesting decision. Now, apparently, about 60% of each audience is downloading this. I overheard somebody saying that. So it's obviously succeeding to a point, but there's 40% of people who aren't even looking.
Yes.
I get the environmental side of it, but I feel like it may not be as effective. So the original, there are indeed original composers. The original music was written by Shlomi Shaban and Michael Solomon. Apologies if I am completely massacring said names. But yes, so the music has been written in advance and it was used. Now, I suppose there could have been, theoretically, it could have been a decision to try and take some music out, but I suspect that would have gone against the principle of trying to represent the show, as it was written. And
it's not so much take the music out, is it? That's the wider question.
For that
in this song, would you have not taken the dialogue out and kept the song? Because
the only thing I would say is that the word, because it's all drug names, actually I think it's more effectively delivered as dialogue because the ear is hearing it and nothing else. You're not distracted in any way by music, and I actually wonder whether it would sink in. The side effects that are being described are clearly understandable. Although I do actually now this is interesting. I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I wonder how much of that was understandable because we just heard it, and maybe that's part of the point. It's also, I suppose, ramming home the amount of drugs she's going to have to take to go through this treatment, the violence of the side effects.
Now that's interesting, but you didn't think that then. At the time, you thought it was repetition. So what that says to me is perhaps the song is misconceived, when in fact actually you need the dialogue which explains for drugs, and then you need the song which explains for side effects.
Potentially, although the side effects are also
the science, and the side effects are the humanity.
Potentially, although the side effects are also described beforehand as well. It is literally a repetition of everything. Perhaps not literally but paraphrased.
Near as damage.
Yeah. I'm sort of sitting here now puzzling about it, but I still don't feel happy with that song. It's my only complaint with the music. Actually, the rest of the music throughout I really enjoyed. I thought it was very, very effective. They used it to bring in these surrealist elements. The doctor, when he's doing his first, I suppose it's a diagnosis on her, and is doing this invasive diagnosis, he's getting out his metaphorical chainsaw and, goes almost Halloween on her and becomes this horror character.
So are the songs, except for this first one, actually used for, if you like, non-reality moments?
Yes, for the most part.
So it's very odd once again that this first song doesn't sound like it is. It sounds like the first song is in reality, whereas all the other songs are during sort of flights of fancy or hallucination or whatever it is.
Well, as Gillian described it in the interview, it's all meant to be the music is happening, what's happening in her head.
Yeah.
And I think actually, yes, that's again, it's a reason why that first song doesn't fit, because it's not, maybe it's because she hasn't for want of a better phrase, lost it enough yet to have gone completely surreal. But even after the fact, once you've seen the show, that first song stands out for the fact that it wasn't like the rest.
Can I ask, is it brain cancer she has, or is it another cancer?
I think it's kind of all over by the time
Right, fine.
I'm
So
trying to
she's
think, because I know they say it's like metastasized to everywhere else. I'm trying to remember if they ever specified initially.
I only ask because if it's specifically a brain cancer, that could explain hallucinations and those moments where you dip in and out of shall we say, the reality of the situation.
Yeah, it's, as far as I can recall, it's not specified where it's originated, but they do say that it's metastasized to other areas.
So we have to assume it's everywhere, pretty much.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. I mean, as you say, it's a play with music. So the first song a little disappointing because of a pure repetition, and it also sounds like it's out of the scheme of things in terms of the other
It
songs.
felt like it to me. Now, maybe it's possible that I wasn't quite into the show enough yet to understand what it was trying to do, but I can't look back on it and go, well, now that I've seen the rest of the show, this makes more sense. That's not there for me, and that's why I continue to have a problem with it. But yeah, the rest, it's the usage of the music for everywhere else I really, really enjoyed. And I thought a song would come in and I go, actually, yeah, this is a great point for this. And then it would forward the story in some way, usually by showing somebody's mental state. Now, that's obviously through Gillian... Carrie Evans is the character's name. That's through Carrie's eyes, which are, drugged up and not with it in this world. And so she's seeing everything as this slightly surreal thing. And that makes it heightens it, but at the same time, it gives it this real impact of something is happening to these people. And I think that's actually really strong. I really, really do, because I think, well, I'm going to throw hands up here and credit Gillian herself, of course, which I've already done, but also Karen Archer, Thea Bielefeld, and Andrea Miller, who play the three other cancer patients. Now, don't get me wrong, everybody in this was great, but those four were just amazingly good. They held this show together. It was standing together anyway, but there was a cohesive bond between them. You really believed that the three ladies had been there for some time. Their minor interactions with each other, particularly behind someone's back, when at first Carrie is pretending like she's not this famous actress, then she starts pretending that actually she's in here to prepare for a role who's going to be a cancer patient. She's being given news by the nurse, and you see these three other women react and whisper to each other, and there's this real sense that there's this little community there.
A camaraderie.
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
Which you do get in hospital wards.
Completely so. And actually, I've just seen another wonderful film which is sort of unrelated to this in most ways, although I suppose in some ways it's... No, you know what? I'm going to take that back. It's quite similar, which is The Bucket List, which is Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman, who both find out they've got terminal cancer while they're sharing a room together, and they come up with this absolutely crazy idea to make it Bucket List, and then abscond from hospital and go and do everything they wanted to do. And I suppose in many ways it's a different way of looking at the same thing. But it's the same kind of bonding going on, and I think that's a great demonstration of it being done in a different way. Like, that was quite a conventional two guys talking, whereas here you really get the sense there's this little gossip group and this amazing actress. They're like, oh my god, it's her. And then you have this shift as she becomes part of the group, then challenges it, gets sent out to the outskirts of it for a little bit, and it's this evolution in there that feels so real. And even though it's in this comedy element, this is a challenging and unashamedly honest piece of theatre.
But can I ask you a question, to go back to the question I asked earlier, which is, you said the songs are helpful. Could it have survived without the songs?
Right, yes. Yes, it could have done.
Then
Should it have done?
Yes, that is my next question. What, therefore, did the songs give that it didn't have?
I think they really added to the surrealism. Once you clocked that that's what the surrealism was all about, you realise that she's just... It's those moments of complete lack of lucidity, where she's seeing things in a totally alternate reality almost.
So it helps delineate from reality.
It does, and I think it does it in a very stark and clear fashion, because you know that there's something going on when the music kicks in. It's not just the basic life in the ward anymore. It's gone to another level somehow. what I think is there's two answers to that question, and one is that. The second one is I feel like I had this odd sense of there either needed to be more songs or none.
Yes.
But I think that is potentially the slight misrepresentation of calling it a musical.
And does it call itself a musical?
That's an interesting question, because it's on all of the advertising material for this production.
Oh, it does?
Yes. So in that sense, yes. Was it considered a musical by Gov? I'm not sure.
But certainly it's been advertised on this occasion as a musical.
Yes. And I do feel like because it said musical, that's why I came out going, there weren't enough songs for it to be a musical. But the thing is, just to clarify that point, I feel like the understanding of what the music is doing became far more important than the fact that of what the number of songs was.
So it was a proper the songs were a tool in this show to add to the understanding of the situation, it seems to me, whereas sometimes in a musical the songs are absolutely lovely but they don't necessarily mean anything other than what the lyrics are telling us. But this actually is serving a different function or an additional function.
Yeah.
Did it finish with a song? Or did the play come to an end having had all the songs in it?
Oh my goodness, I can't honestly remember. No, it finished
As
on
a play.
text, on dialogue.
Yeah. Which I think it tells an interesting story, because you explained it didn't open with a song, it doesn't close with a song, so the songs are there serving the narrative, as songs should do in a musical, but in a completely different way, it seems to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was just that. I'm not going to spoil the end of the show, because I think, suffice it to say, it was a happy ending. Spoiler. But quite how, I will leave for people, because I think you must try and see this show. I think it will challenge you. I think it will probably make some people feel quite uncomfortable. But I think it might also make you question your understanding of what it's like to be somebody in this position. And actually, I think that's kind of where that surrealism and the music really, really helps, because it takes you out of just, this is a person in a ward, and it becomes, this is a person in a ward who is clearly not right by herself at this moment in time. And I think that the fact that it's the drugs that are doing that to her, it's really, that's the ultimate question when it comes down to it, is fighting cancer when it is that severe and that terminal. Is it worth fighting to stay alive a little longer and potentially eventually have a treatment that might cure you, or do you just accept your lot?
It is quality versus quantity of life, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yes, it's
absolutely.
An age-old question which has not yet been resolved.
No, and I think the problem is, until we have a cure for everything, there's no way of answering it, because we can't actually offer a guarantee either way. And I feel like it tackles that head on, and I think that's why I say some people might feel a little bit uncomfortable. But I think if you stick with it, what you actually do is you come out the other end feeling a little bit uplifted, with a lot of questions. And actually, that's the biggest thing for me. I came out of this with so many questions, questioning myself, questioning what how the characters ended up to a certain extent, looking at cancer patients in a way that I hadn't done before.
So you're engaged emotionally and intellectually.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned in the interview that I've had family that suffered from cancer, and so I have seen some of its effects, not all of them, but some of them. And I feel, now, admittedly, I was substantially younger when I saw it the closest, but I now look at it and I think, well, did I fully understand what they were going through? Did I fully understand their mindset and what it was that they were actually battling with? And actually, I feel I have a better understanding now than I did before. Which I think, if that's, that's the piece has served its purpose. And I think that actually, massive kudos have got to go out to Guy Ritalik, who directed the piece as well, because I feel like that the direction in this was so subtle that I feel like at times your own mind is being manipulated without you realizing it's happening, and these questions are being implanted in there, and the way that he's used that surrealism, the way that he's used the delivery of shock jokes and the use of shock imagery at points is really, really powerful, and I mean, it serves this piece beautifully. The same is true of the choreography. Choreographer for this was Jordi Guitart. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I think that's to an extent, perhaps. There were a couple of points where I felt like the one problem I had with the choreography was that there were points where I was distracted from what I was meant to be looking at.
Right.
There was a particular section where it was sort of split into principal choreography and ensemble choreography, and the ensemble, 2 of the ladies were still in their beds, and 2 of the other characters were standing behind them, and they were sort of doing hand motions, quite sort of...
Intricate?
No. It was very, very simple. I don't know how you describe it.
1960s dancing. Was
Yeah,
yes.
pretty much going sort of... So yes, dated period dancing. And because they were doing their movements, but they weren't quite doing the same thing as the principal dancers were, my eye kept getting distracted away. And maybe that was intentional, and if it was, then it worked. But it felt to me like I wasn't paying attention to what I was supposed to be seeing.
So distracting in a way.
Yeah, and there were a couple of points where I felt like there was a little bit of a letdown to the motion that was going on because there was something distracting me. So that was...
It's almost like there's too much choreography in the piece.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like if the ladies had just been sort of sitting there and bopping along quietly to themselves, they'd have been okay, but because the hand motions became involved, they became a lot more part of this.
If there's enough meat on the plate, then you don't need too much bread on the side. Yes,
now that's only in part. I mean, things like the as soon as the tango dancer comes on with the crab claws and starts dancing, there are moments like that. There's a moment with the dance with the doctor. There are some full... Was there a full ensemble number? I forget right now. Whether there was everybody involved at any one point in a full choreographed dance. I think there were. They were really, really effective, and I feel like, again, they play off this wonderful surrealism of her going a little bit cuckoo. And it was just so well presented, and that's why I felt a little bit disappointed by those moments where I was pulled out of it.
It seems to me the crab, in a way, is almost the leitmotif in this, or at least symbolic, because crabs always walk to the side, and it sounds like very much a sideways view. This really very difficult...
Actually, that's a very good way of
harrowing
describing it, and I hadn't really thought of it in those terms, but that's very, very true. So yes, I think that's a very fair question, or a very fair statement, sorry. And it's funny, I keep coming back to the crab just because in so many ways I feel like he was the most memorable of the
he would stand out
surrealistic moments, because there were other bits that were a little bit more medically oriented. I won't spoil all of them, but we've mentioned it both in this interview and with Gillian, this globe that represents her cancer while she's studying it at the end of the first act and the beginning of the second. But the crab is just totally unmedical, and he just comes in as this absolute wacky character. And I like that idea that it's symbolic of how the view angle that's being taken, because I do feel like you're seeing this from an angle you wouldn't normally.
It certainly sounds like it. People can still see it, though, can't
They can. It's on at the Arcola Theatre, and it is on until the 7th of March. So if you get the opportunity to go down there, please do. It's a fantastic little show. First time at the venue, actually. I hadn't been to the Arcola before, and I really rather liked it. Fascinatingly, for a small theatre, it actually has a circle of sorts. Yes, it's a thrust stage. So you've got 3 sides down on the base, and it's rectangular, and the long side, the front-facing side, has a circle above it. So I'm not even sure how many they could fit in there, but I'd be willing to guess it's probably something like 200. It's quite a big space.
Deceptively large.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really, really hope, and I keep reiterating this, but I really hope people aren't being too put off by the subject matter, because I really don't think you should be. You must try and see this.
Well, I'll tell you why I hope people aren't as well, because the thing you said earlier on in this conversation was that you left a little bit uplifted.
Yeah.
And that's not what you'd expect.
No, absolutely not. It might be what you'd expect from reading the title, but it's not what you'd expect from
reading the description.
No. And I suppose there's a certain extent to which you know it's going to be an informed show, given that it was written by a terminal cancer patient. But do you appreciate that it's going to be a fun show? No, you probably wouldn't expect that. With the new poster, I'm inclined to say you have a much better idea of that, but I don't know how widely that's been distributed. It's certainly on Twitter. I'm assuming that they've replaced their advertising at the theatre itself. But yeah, I would say a good 4-star show here. It's got a few little issues. It's not quite perfect, but for what it's doing, it does it extremely well.
Well, thank you for telling me all about it, David.
My very pleasure, sir.
Talking to you.
Likewise. So, indeed. So there everybody is our opinion. Well, my opinion and Thus's Inquisition on Happy Ending. A show I'm going to say again, please do try and catch this if you can. It really is a fantastic piece, and you've got a couple of weeks left, I think, to try and get hold of this. And if you do, I think you'll find yourself well rewarded. Pick up the challenge and accept the challenge, because you need to do that. And if you do that, I think you'll come out with this really pleased that you went to go and give it a shot. And I hope it deserves the audience. So there we go. And with that, that's probably the last you're going to hear from me for a little while, as I am now
Which makes
disappearing.
this an unhappy ending.
Oh, yes, I'm sad it does. I am disappearing back off to Canada for another year or so. So I disappear very soon. In fact, in a matter of hours.
But we have a few episodes in the can.
We do, yes. Stos and I have been plotting today, so this won't be the last you hear of me, and I may well do some work from Canada. It entirely depends on what I end up seeing while I'm out there. But yes, for now, this is me signing off from London Theatre for a little while. So speak to you next time. This episode of Musical Talk was presented by David Kingsmill and Thos Ribbits and edited by Thos Ribbits. The Musical Talk theme is copyright David Kingsmill 2012.
Copyright Musical Talk 2015. And why not follow Musical Talk on Facebook and Twitter?
No, I don't want to hear.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Musical Talk. This is David Kingsmill, and I am sitting here with Mr. Thos Ribbits. Hello, sir.
Hello.
And lovely to see you as well, sir. And we are about to talk...
Ladies and gentlemen,
Oh
would you
my...
please take your seats in the Olivier Theatre as this evening's performance of Behind the Beautiful Forevers is about to begin. May I remind you that the taking of photographs is not permitted during the performance, and to please ensure that all mobile phones are completely switched off. Thank you.
I can't. Have you ever seen Noises Off?
No, I haven't, but I know exactly... I was thinking it must have played that goes wrong.
Yeah, but Noises Off, they actually make a thing about the 1 minute call, and they start getting the order wrong.
Oh, do they?
So
Ah, right.
more than one person's doing it, it all goes horribly wrong. So
Right.
they do 5 minutes,
I need
3
to
minutes,
see that
1
show,
minute,
I really
3
do.
minute, 1 minute.
Right.